Okay, good morning, everybody. I've had the opportunity to talk to a number of folks over the course of the session, and one of the things I've learned is that not everybody is very familiar with this topic. It's not quite like tech titans. So before we get started, let me just set this up a little bit. If you take content business and break it down into the biggest buckets, I think it would not be at all controversial to say there's a whole bunch of things around content authoring and ingest. All the things that we do to get information out of people's heads and into our systems. And then there's a whole bucket of stuff that's all about content enhancement, taking that content and making it smarter, getting information around taxonomy or folksonomy if you go that way, tagging, all of the things that we've been talking about recently with XML. And then there's a whole bunch of activities that go on around distribution, getting the content out to our customers in a various set of formats and different devices and anywhere, everywhere. I would argue to you that over the history of our industry, we have spent most of our time and most of our differentiation in the first bucket. We get content that our users can't get anywhere else, or we make it, and we bring it into one place, and we charge for that. And that has been primarily our differentiation point. Over the last number of years, you started to see a shift into the middle bucket. People are doing a lot more with smart tagging, semantics, all of these different technologies that are coming in to help us get smarter about our content and to help our content get smarter. So you're now starting to see that really take hold. But I would argue to you that we have not seen a real revolution on the distribution side. And some of you may be thinking, wait a minute, what about all the stuff we talked about yesterday with tablets? What about all the stuff with TVs as the center of our home? What about all this mobility work? How come that's not a revolution? And I think for the consumer of the information, it is. But if you look at the way that content providers have really worked in mobility, I would say it's a little bit more incremental. You've certainly seen business model innovation. You've certainly seen interactivity innovation. But in terms of what we do and how we get that content through the system and out, I would argue it's not as revolutionary as we like to say. So now we're going to talk about content APIs. I believe, personally, that this does represent a revolution for our business because it fundamentally challenges everything we're trying to do. It challenges who owns the content. It challenges customer relationships. It challenges business models. It challenges branding. It challenges editorial. Everything that we do in our system is challenged by this concept. And it's just a matter of a decision made on an individual basis of how far we go to take advantage of this or to mitigate the threats. So that is the topic that we're going to talk about today. We have 3 people on our panel who really are wrestling with this problem and interestingly enough, in very different ways. So Drew Bartkevich is from Mashery, which is a company that very much at the forefront of helping companies develop and distribute APIs. So they have a platform that allows you, if you're a content owner, to do that, and he'll talk a little bit more about that. Next to him, Raphael Sidi from Elsevier, who developed one of the early open API platforms and is now responsible for a big chunk of the API strategy at Elsevier. And Lou Andriazzi on the end, who is a familiar face to many of you, the chairman of Bloomberg Law. So we will just start off, I think, really, given the familiarity with the topic, I think I'd like to ask Drew to just give us 90 seconds on what is a content API? Why should I as a content owner care? Why should I as a content consumer care about this topic? Drew, if you don't mind.
Sure. Maybe just a show of hands. Who's heard of the term before, API? Just a show of hands. Okay, so we don't need to go into school definitions. Maybe I'll just give you a couple statistics to illustrate where the market's moving. It took up till 2009 for the market to have 1,000 open APIs. That means that there were approximately 1,000 companies brave enough to open up their APIs. And an API is basically a window into your back end. It's either a web service, it's a set of data, or it's a large database of content. But on this side of the coast in particular, open sometimes is a 4-letter word. It creates hysteric fears of open means vulnerable. Open means we're going to cannibalize our existing business. Or that open means unknown. And I would absolutely refute the security one and vulnerable, because now in the last 18 months, there's 4,500 companies, up from 1,000. So in less than 2 years, we've gone from 1,000 open APIs in the market to 4,500. So per Kevin's request to describe what is an API, I think his analogy of a bucket is a very good one. And most of the companies in this room have been in the business for many years selling buckets. That bucket's 5-gallon bucket of content. It's what we sell. It's what our product managers have designed the last 10 years. And you are going to buy that bucket. But the customer might not want just that bucket. They might want 5 of your buckets. But they don't want it as a report. They don't want it as a subscription. They certainly don't want access to your portal to download that bucket. What they want is much more access and flexibility to take what's in that bucket and siphon off the type of content they want and they need. So APIs are a function of moving from this sell a fixed product to moving your company to a platform. And a platform like an Amazon, like a Salesforce.com, like, we'll take a business example, even like Hoover's, Dun & Bradstreet, have gone from bucket selling as their primary model to now giving someone a access such as a hose. And you can access that data at a very cheap level with low flow, or you could turn that access very hard up because you have a business model that will consume that data at greater pace. So the flow of data is driving the market for APIs.
Thank you. Maybe a great place to start here is down the road, because this is such a new one. One of the speakers yesterday talking about first predict the future. So I think maybe that's a good place to start. So, particularly as I think about you, Lou and Raphael, as content owners of branded content that people trust, brands that people trust. If you take us down the road, 5 years, 3 years, 7 years, whatever you think is appropriate, how do you see content consumption changing? How do you think that this type of API model changes the way that users consume content and you produce content and distribute it? What do you see as the big shift?
Again, I don't want to make any prediction on what's going to happen in 5 or 7 years, but just to add what Matt said is one key element for us with the API strategy that we started is how we can empower our customers in building our products. So API for us is a dissemination element for the future too. So we need to also understand as a publisher that probably some of you already had API internally that you are using, and you were not calling them. You were calling them maybe web services that your internal teams were using. So with the new trends now, everyone started changing from web services to API. But the way that we see in the future is still we are going to figure out a way how to disseminate the content where the users are. This can be API, this can be open social. Even the platform that we started today is based on open social. This can be RSS or any other means, because we want to reach where our users are